This episode is sponsored by SKS Luxury Appliances. If you've spent time around Signature Kitchen Suite, one thing designers notice right away is the technology. The interface feels familiar and intuitive because it's the same engineering that comes from LG, the company that produces the systems used in many of the luxury vehicles people drive today. Clients recognize it instantly and know how to navigate it, but SKS is also investing in designers through their Designer Rewards program and by sponsoring IDC. If you're specifying kitchens for serious cooks, give SKS a look. Learn more at sksappliances.com. SKS, built for people who truly love cooking. Hi, I'm Laurie with To the Trade for Interior Design Community. I have Jaclyn Isaac here, who has a new fun thing to talk about. Hi, Jaclyn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, first, let's start introductions. Who are you? Tell our audience and a little bit about your design background.
Of course. So my name is Jaclyn with Donnie Douglas Designs and now Nest Freight, which is our new logistics company for interior designers, which is super exciting.
It is super exciting. It is super.
It is, yeah. It is like my third baby. It's been a wild journey already. We technically soft launched in March. We've done nearly no marketing, which has been a lot of fun to see the growth without a major marketing push, just really simply word of mouth and being mentioned in really key conversations.
I
And
mentored you.
I know I can't like you getting that email and then going back into the Facebook group and seeing the mention without, we don't even have a Facebook at this point. So knowing that we're in those conversations and in that room without even, making a major push right now is just super cool. And it just signifies how much this industry needs a solution like this. So
It's true. It's true. So to clear that up for the audience, Jaclyn is interior designer. Let's start at why you noticed and why you started a shipping company of all things as an interior designer. What happened? Why did you do that?
two things happened. And I feel like anytime I speak about this, everybody has their own horror story. I was working on a very high-end penthouse apartment in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and I was 7 months pregnant, and I was managing a photo shoot, and everything was being delivered at the same time of the photo shoot for the install in the morning, and boxes were being delivered unopened. And I was working with a receiver that many in New Jersey actually do work with. This is a person that people know. And I was being told that things just didn't arrive with enough time to open boxes. Jack, we get a lot of deliveries. This came, about a week before. We just didn't get a chance to open things. And I was opening things to damage. And at that point, it was really frustrating because not only was it those items that had arrived a couple days before that still should have been opened and inspected if they were making it onto the truck. It was stuff that was sitting in the warehouse for months. And so I was out, thousands of dollars. The client's install was totally upside down and it just destroyed the entire experience for them. And I was on the floor of this hallway, opening boxes to, those tiny little styrofoam balls like everywhere. I'm getting in trouble with the front bellman and, everybody in the apartment was staring at what was going on down the hallway. And it just felt like as a luxury interior designer and someone who offers this really high level experience, how could I be working with a team that just did not value the service the way that I did? And so that was disappointing and a huge light bulb moment for me. So I brought receiving in-house at that point. The second thing that happened, which has developed into an offering within Nest Freight for designers, was we were working on another amazing project and we had gotten a quote for this incredible hand-carved marble tile from Italy, Giovanni Barbieri. Don't know if you know him, but you should.
Yes.
And we had received a shipping quote for around $900 for about $6,000 worth of tile for a backsplash. When I went to go actually purchase and move the shipment, it was $3,000. That was my quote for shipping.
Wow.
So I was faced with this impossible reality of
50% of the good itself.
Yeah. I mean, and what do? Do you go back to the client and say, actually, we have a $2,000 increase in shipping. Let's still move forward. Or do you eat that cost for the sake of the project? And so I had a friend who was actually working in logistics, who's now our co-founder. And I said, how does this work? Is this the mafia? Is this how it's run? Do I got to pay somebody at the port? And he laughed and said, let me work my contacts. And we ended up getting that same shipment delivered for $541 landed at our client's home. So that was my huge, huge light bulb moment to say, my goodness, if I just stopped and paid that bill, I mean, how many other opportunities have I missed out on being able to take back that margin to be able to control my costs a little bit better? So this whole world's kind of opened up to me in terms of logistics. And my background is in project management. So I know and love getting dropped into very chaotic situations and really enjoy kind of right siding up those specific situations. So this was just a way for me to continue to try to solve and problem solve for this really, really messy and chaotic part of such a beautiful industry, which makes me
Yeah.
sad. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think when I first talked to you about it, we were at High Point, we're having pizza, chilling out, and we were talking about the problems in the design world, and you were explaining what this would do. Immediately, I was just knew there were going to be designers who were going to sign up because they know they're experiencing the same thing you are in scale. And how many of them, I can't even imagine if we did the math, how many are eating those costs, extrapolating it out project by project over the last 10 years, that designers have probably just been like, oh, I can't go back to them and tell them that new cost because I just can't do it. And I know it's gotten particularly crazy since COVID, but it's always been let's just face it, it's always been a problem, right? So it's just exacerbated by the new fuel prices and tariff prices.
you're hitting on the head.
It's always been an issue. It's
Yeah,
always been an issue.
it's
And
always
do
been
you
an issue.
feel like there were brands too that you were thinking like they're marking this up a little bit more than you would think?
Well, I know that for a fact because every time we go and quote a shipment, I'm seeing an average savings of $150 to $200 per shipment when I actually go out and requote my own freight costs. So it's a reality that we are paying the markup. And listen, I want everybody to make money and I'm happy to do that. But at the end of the day, I feel like designers, we oftentimes have to take responsibility for things financially that are just not our fault. And we are trying to provide a really high end service for clients who don't want to feel like they're constantly being nickel and dimed. And going back to the client to say, here's your beautiful product that we're going to get shipped, but actually we got hit with a tariff and a fuel surcharge and all. It's just not fun. It's not a pleasant conversation. So, in order to kind of stop a lot of that, we should have an opportunity, just like a lot of these procurement clubs, you have an opportunity to buy things at a little bit of a lesser rate with volume. My goal and intention on this is gathering the industry together and demanding better rates because we are buying, I mean, these numbers in
I know
terms
the
of
numbers.
volume. Like, how much do we move as an industry? It's enormous. So why are we having to pay a premium for the same services that could be offered to us, directly through some of these carriers? So that's been I get sweaty thinking about it because I just get really like, I cannot believe we're being hosed like this.
I know it's the injustice of it. You're like,
It
there's got
is.
to be a better way, and you're building the
It is.
better way. So I love seeing that.
Yeah.
And when we originally were chit chatting, I remember you said, I want to get 100 people. That's my
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
Which I think I love when people start something and they have reasonable goals. It always makes me take the business a little bit more seriously. And I meet with a lot of people who want our industry. So you should know on my day to day, I might meet 2 or 3 people a week that are like, please set up a meeting with me. I'm trying to do something for interior designers. And they're not all on my podcast
Yeah.
because
Well,
sometimes
listen,
I'm like, this is nuts.
the fact
No.
that I mean, I don't know if your listeners know. I mean, we recorded a podcast. It went totally sideways in terms of the audio. I had terrible internet, and you're allowing me to come on again to talk about
Yeah.
this topic. And it's just, I could talk about this all day, but you have truly made a mark and you offer such an authentic service to designers just by having the conversations that a lot of us are desperate to talk to our colleagues about, but oftentimes don't get the chance or the opportunity to, unless it's behind closed doors at a specific event and a specific person might be talking about it within earshot. I mean, you are blasting, Instagram and the internet with real solutions to problems that interior designers face. And I feel like you authentically care so deeply about this industry and its success. And it's really, it's so impressive. And obviously, I'm super grateful to share this message, but you
Well,
are
it's
like,
true. I mean, I really do I think that there are things we can do as an industry that will change the trajectory of how we're taken. And when you see when you are in this situation, I feel like anybody who's in my situation would have to do it because you can't not see what the fundamental problems are. And then when you can identify them, you can start fixing them. So We
Right.
have identified like 95% of interior designers don't know what interior designers do. And we've identified that several of you don't have like retirement savings. These are things that I'm like, when I think about like things that you're bringing to the table, if that could end up in a designer's retirement savings or their investments, if that $200 per order or 150 or whatever that works out to be, when I can times that by how many orders you're processing, and if that even just like 50% of it made it back to the client, but 50% of it made it to you as a designer to go to your investments, where would we all be? Where would my people be? At the end of their long career, where they've busted their butt and they're opening boxes and they're handling all this stress, and their bodies are not able to do the thing that they love to do anymore. Are you going to be okay? That's what I do care about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's significant when it comes to the idea that every shipment could be a savings, even if it's, and sometimes like we will quote something and sometimes it actually doesn't make sense. Like I just did that with made goods. We're only buying one stool, for example, and our freight cost to move something from California to Florida doesn't make sense on that particular order. So that's fine. At least I have a choice. And I know that it only took me a couple of minutes to figure out if I had a better solution or not. So I'm comfortable with the freight that I'm paying them, and that's great. But it's always a situation where I don't want to be in a desperate situation like I was with the tile at that point to say like, oh my God, there's $2,000 out of the project that I will never recover. How do I find that amount of money again? And now I am creating a solution where we don't have to be pushed into a corner like that.
right.
And it's not easy by any means. I'm sure you can imagine the doors that I'm knocking on are not very friendly to the design industry to begin with. But, I think those who are, working with us and are calling us to say, hey, like we work with a lot of interior designers. We love what you're doing. And I've had a couple of brands talk to us. We're just not ready to get to the level of like manufacturers. This is a solution for designers and it's going to stay that way. That's, that is our customer. The customer is me. They're my friends, they're my colleagues, and that's what this service is for. But it's really cool to see somebody acknowledge like this is a great idea. We would also love to save on shipping costs and pass that along to designers. Let's do this together. Like that's been one of the most exciting things too, is getting that outside excitement around that, because they also want the design industry to succeed because we are their customers, and if we are not making money and successful, we're not buying from them. So I
Absolutely.
think it's a win-win all around.
I
So
do too. And if it could give us, a little bit more margin, or if it could give us a little bit more, flexibility in the project, great. And when we first met, I remember you said you wanted 100 designers. Have you gotten there?
not yet. We are at around 21 firms that have signed up so far. And like I said, we've done really no marketing. I mean, I have people signing up who I don't even, a lot of it was my friends at first. I was like,
Yes.
all my friends are going to join the platform. And I felt like getting the message out would be a little bit harder, but just people have been messaging me. I stumbled upon your solution on Instagram. Like, I don't know how I found you. And that is super cool. And they'll sign up and become founding members without me even actually knowing who they are. So I think once we
Well, once
start
you
to
can put
really
out
talk
those
about it,
success stories, like honestly, like a graphic that shows you don't have to name names, but this client's bill was this, now it's this. You just start putting those out on a regular basis. I think it's going to be magical. You're going to see more and more of those designers, because that's all we all talk. We all know each other. If
yes, we
there's
do.
something that's going to save a designer some money, she's going to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest, I guess, issue or adoption issue that we might have is like for me, quoting my own shipping and doing my own receiving has just been so natural because I was forced into that solution and now I'm building something around it. So I'm so familiar with it. But oftentimes designers, I think, just don't think that that's an opportunity for them to look for something better or to actually go out and get another quote. And it feels like a lot of work. So I'm trying to take much of that friction out of the equation. So my ultimate goal would be you want to become an interior designer and you have your shipping solutions like ready to go. Like, you're going to work with Nest Freight. All you need to do is show up to High Point and all these beautiful conferences like Design Edge to get a sense of how you need to build your business properly and who you want to work with. But the shipping stuff doesn't have to be such a headache, which I feel like right now is totally the opposite. We become interior designers. We're super excited about this creative journey. And then it's like, who's your receiver? You open an account at High Point. Who's your receiver? And a lot of my designer friends who work on really big homes are like, I didn't even realize I needed one. Like, I don't even know what the process would be. And it inhibits your growth too as a designer to work on these larger projects, because where are you going to put a 120-inch sectional? Where are you going to put this massive dresser? You can't fit it in your garage, and you certainly shouldn't be getting it delivered to the client's home without inspecting it. So it's just like, it's a snowball effect of what could be, and also how do we get designers to start thinking through this is not hard. It's just maybe one additional step will become very natural in your process once you start to do this a little bit more frequently.
Right. And once you start to see that savings
Yes,
for, I mean, I think that becomes worth it for, like I said, if you made it a habit of just like, you're going to split that with the client, you're going to give 50% of it back, the savings back to the client, and 50% of it to you, to just for the first year, so you can get a grasp of what that number looks like.
Yeah.
And then from that point, you can just kind of like, well, I know I'm going to build on top of the shipping this much, this percentage or whatever.
Yeah.
You can even do it 6 months and figure it out. And then you don't have to like look at the other quotes. You just, first, as an example, you don't have to like compare anymore, because you kind of have an average of what you want to be putting in your bank account to handle this extra process. Because you shouldn't handle an extra process in your business without making money for doing so. So
yeah, that's a good rule.
Yeah. So just put some of that money. It's not like, oh, great, I saved, $2,000 for my client. No, you saved your client $1,000, and you saved, your own business $1,000. So you can put that back into your own business. So
I always say, like, you could be a hero at the end of a project and give them a check back and say, look how much money we saved you. And a lot of this was, do whatever you want with it. Or, hire somebody, or take a vacation, or give yourself 2 weeks off, or, buy that program or the extra computer, or go get a pedicure. I don't know, like, do whatever you want. That money is yours. That money is, that profit, that extra margin is yours to do what it is that you need to. We're just helping you find it. And you're already buying, right? Like, we are already purchasing at volume. We're already doing the things that we're supposed to be doing as designers. This is stuff that we need to do anyway. So why not try to save a little bit of money on it?
Yeah, I agree. Now, you also are thinking that you might eventually get into receiving as well. Is that still part of the plan of Nest, or?
It is.
It is.
Yeah. Well, since we last spoke, I guess things just continued to move very quickly for us. But I'm trying to do things quickly so I can solve a lot of these issues. And my friends, have specifically asked for receiving. So I'm just trying to solve for that. We have a location in New Jersey. We have a location in Southern California and San Diego. And we do have a connection to Florida. So we are pretty much live in those 3 states. And I focused there because that seems to be most of our user base is New York, New Jersey, Florida, and California. So we are live with receiving, and it's all within the platform, which is really exciting. And we'll eventually, hopefully, maybe look to new locations I'm looking to build whatever our user base is looking for us to offer. I mean, I think we're in a really unique time frame right now between AI and the start of the business and excitement around everything, where the next 12 to 15 months can really shape, users that are working with us now, early founding members, can really shape their experience on the platform. Tell us what you need, and we'll create it. So right now that's the need. And yeah, I'm excited to actually receive for my friends. I think that's strange to say, but it's been a lot of fun.
I mean, I think that people don't understand, that are outside of our industry, don't get how complicated that piece is, because there are so many things that are included with, you're buying a sofa, you've got other pieces in there, and it's blanket wrapped, but there might be other little pieces and components. And the same thing for many different components that we have. You might not know that there's a missing component until a day that you need to install it. And then now it's too late. You've screwed the whole project as far as timeline is concerned. And those things are not your fault. They're out of your hands if they're in somebody else's world. And it doesn't mean your receiving is never, ever, ever going to have problems, but somebody who gets us, who gets how we work and what the components typically look like.
Correct.
In my world, I've watched designers start things. Like, I've watched designers start project management software. Sarah Daniele from Mydoma was an early member of IDC. Before Mydoma started, we were having like Zooms on an evening, just chit chatting about that she had built a software for herself because she was having problems with running the project and she wanted to do this for herself. And we were talking about it and we were like, you should do that for everyone. We all need that. And she started working on that. She and her husband started working on it. It became My Doma. They eventually sold the business for $7 million. So
Good for them.
that's the thing. Like, just have someone just come in and start something addressing the pain points that they themselves are experiencing.
Yeah.
Where we usually just find people who are like, we think we can solve this thing outside of our industry who really don't know us. And they don't really care about us. And when you don't care about a pain point, really, like fundamentally, I don't care. I just want to make money on this group of people. And I'm not saying other people, by the way, I'm not bashing any project management software out there. I'm not saying that specifically. But I was like, there is motivation that is an extra level of motivation when you yourself have experienced this problem.
For sure.
And and you care about the individuals who are experiencing that problem. And you're not just seeing like, here's a group of people we can make a ton of money on. You're instead saying, here's a problem we can solve.
Yeah.
And we can save the money, or that's your motivation. That's a very different thing.
I think, I've noticed that there are a lot of receivers. And as I've dug into, we've done financial modeling around what receiving would look like for us and how much we would charge, just trying to, because in my effort to tackle a lot of the logistics and the issues that I find, a lot of it is also price transparency, which, you'll get an invoice 2 weeks after things have been delivered for things that you didn't even know that you were being charged for. You've already invoiced the client. How do you go back to them and ask them for more money, even with receiving, right? So we talked about that with freight, but even on the receiving side, that happens all the time. Or, you think that your receiving fees cover delivery and then all of a sudden they don't, or you're hit with another outbound charge. And I have asked receivers in the past, I need a line by line. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you just sent me an invoice for $3,000. I don't know what's included, what it's for. Do you know what it's for? How many days in storage? How are you calculating this? There was a lot of loss of transparency. So the idea was to pull that into Nest Rate and give designers an opportunity to go out and actually, be able to inform their clients ahead of time how much this is going to cost, right? I feel like that's such a basic request, but that was something that I think a lot of receivers just don't understand. Like, why do you need these costs right now? Because we are not the client. Like, we have a client that we are dealing with at the end of the day that needs this information sooner than versus later. I also find that some receivers, they'll say they inspect and they'll look at everything, but I had actually opened a chair received from Four Hands, and my logistics co-founder was at the warehouse when I was doing this inspection, and I'm showing him little pockets of small little tears in the leather that I think, he was like, I don't know if anyone who's not a designer would really, look in detail for that. And I was like, oh yeah, my client is going to inspect this chair. It's a brand new dining chair. She's going to look at it. She's going to run her hand over the leather. And this is obviously not acceptable. So this has to go back. And so it's little things like that I think, when you're just a receiving warehouse, anyone can open a warehouse and receive goods, but can you open and truly inspect and know that when that chair is getting to a client, what they are going to be looking for? And I don't think that there's that many individuals who are able to do that if you're not practicing interior design. So,
right. I agree. I think that if you don't know how our business runs and what that expectation is, not only do you probably don't have that level of care either. You just aren't. You care, but you don't care that to that extent,
Mm-hmm.
And design is when someone is paid the money that they're paying for a luxury good, it is not the level of which they inspect the product it is definitely linked to how much they paid for it.
For sure.
So the more expensive it is, the more they're going to be looking at how every detail. So,
for sure.
And we all know that because we live in the design world. So if it costs $3,000, they're looking at it. It's $3,000. If it's $12,000, we're looking at it a lot closer.
Yeah.
I
I had a designer reach out. I had a designer reach out and she said, we have chairs coming from this particular studio in LA. And she told me what they were quoting her for shipping. And I thought it was high. So we're working together on another quote. But, I know that those chairs from that studio, just because I know the studio's name, those need to be handled like very particularly, because if there is one scratch, we're not talking about, a $400 dining chair. We are talking about $2,000 a chair. So it's like, it's also just so industry specific in terms of where you're getting things done. Someone says, a particular studio versus a retail manufacturer. And, there's very much a difference in valuation, which means difference in insurance, which means difference in I'm like, hey, we need to pay for all the extra stuff here because God forbid something happens. You want to make sure that you're fully covered. So it's also just having that conversation to say, what we're dealing with is not just a sofa. It's somebody's, somebody's big reveal of their home. It's their, these are not just pieces of furniture. There are moments in your clients' lives. And I think a lot of times receiving warehouses just completely forget that. We're not 3PLing, makeup or, a t-shirt. It's like, these are serious installations and moments in people's lives. And when these things go haywire for no reason other than someone is not paying attention, it is super disheartening. So,
yeah. I mean, and there is a real reality for designers where that affects their long-term business too, and referrals and how if they are constantly going back to that client and there's this charge and oh, now it's broken. Now it's scratched. Like all of those moments create a feeling of distrust with the designer. And then you're less likely to refer them. You're less likely to work with them again. And, this really has a financial impact on that interior designer's business and the word of mouth that they get, because they're trying to give a level of customer service to that client. And so much of that is tied to things that are out of the designer's control. They can't help it if it got shipped and it's broken. They can't help if it's received and no one inspect it. Really, they're relying on these outside people who it doesn't affect their reputation. It affects ours.
right. It's amazing to me. I mean, you know better than I do. I mean, we've spoken about manufacturers and who really cares about designers and who just kind of talks about caring about designers. And it's very true. And you even said, we all talk about which vendors we like right now, who's a major pain in the booty, who, is really supporting us and supportive with an issue versus who's just not answering the phone. I mean, it's every day in our Instagram chats and our DMs and our text message chains. I mean, we are all talking about
100%. And I mean, there are things I know that I don't even share, obviously, behind the scenes because I don't want to tank anybody's business. But there's a particular brand that was getting a lot of bad press yesterday, and I was like,
I know.
Well, I didn't say anything, but I was like, I've DM'd the president of that company when a designer was having a particular problem, and they told me in text, what do you want me to do about it? And I was like, you told Laurie Laker of Interior Design Community?
I don't have an ego until.
No, exactly. Do you know my audience? Like, do you know?
Do you know who I am? Yeah. I mean, seriously though, that's so silly. I think I know which manufacturer you're talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I saw that thread. I didn't get a chance to look through all the comments, but yeah, I mean,
bad.
The comments are bad.
As I expected, because I've been hearing it now for over a year, and I've been telling even some of the manufacturers, I'm like, reputation's on sticky ground here, so pay attention.
But those are enough of us.
Yeah. I mean, I think I recognize the power of an interior designer's, and when things like this become public, like, hey, this brand is not being fair. We don't expect perfection. This is not a world where we are expecting that everything that's shipped is going to arrive beautifully and that there's not going to be a problem. But when we are facing problems that exist over and over and over again, and we don't see any light at the tunnel of any solution that makes any sense, and we're being told the same, like, oh, there's only, 2% breakage. And then we talk to 20 designers and they're like, this is not the reality that I'm facing. We're not dumb. And I think that that's what manufacturers have to recognize too, is like, we all talk. There isn't a designer I know of that doesn't have a text message group with like 10 other designers, and they're like, we had a problem with this person again. And it's always about clients and
Yeah.
contractors and manufacturers. So, because that's out of our control.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would even say, like, in a lot of our text chains too, we're even asking before we place orders, has anyone worked with this company? Has anyone worked with this contractor? Has anyone worked with this architect? And we're all very, I'd say, like, above board. There's never, but if you have a specific issue, like I've spoken to a couple of designer friends when I've seen someone mentioned in the group chat, and I'll say, hey, give me a call and I'll tell them about my experience. But, I think it's important that we're protecting each other. And same thing again in warehousing, receiving. I just got a call probably 2 weeks ago from a friend of mine. I told her about my experience with this one particular receiver, and this was years ago and really kicked off this whole idea of nest freight in the back of my mind. And she ran into an issue where he didn't actually look at something properly, and it's costing her $3,000. And I was like, listen, I don't want to say I told you so, but I knew this was going to happen because it's happened to me. And, this is what happens, and you have to warn
Does. I mean, there are manufacturers that are, have better reputations than others. And we have to look out for each other. We in this industry, I feel like it's a necessity that we look out for one another because there isn't anybody else looking out for us. I mean, at the end of the day, from the manufacturer's perspective, we're the lowest on their totem pole because other than the consumer, we're the lowest because the stores buy, some of these brands are $80 million businesses, that are buying $80 million worth of product. And very rarely as a designer, they might influence $80 million of sales, but they're not typically they don't get profit on all of that. They might be like picking architectural lighting for all their clients, tile, pavers, like things that that you visually see, but they don't make money on every single thing. And so from the manufacturer's standpoint, we educate manufacturers all the time on this thing we call protect the spec, which is there are lots of designers who are protecting the specification of your product that you don't even have eyeballs on.
Right.
And you would not be getting that sale without the designer, but you don't even know that. And that is part of why you should be, caring about what designers are doing and the customer's level of customer service that you're providing on that job to the design trade, because then if you're a pain in the butt, they're not going to specify you anymore.
Right.
And then your sale is gone and you're like, why? I don't even know why this customer is not working with us anymore. And so a lot of it is like, but I understand their perspective. I mean, it's the same as we would do. Like if we had a design client who we've done 3 houses with, we're giving them a certain level of customer service that we are certainly not going to be giving a client who comes in and wants one room zhuzhed up for Christmas. Like it's not the same level of customer service because it's not the same amount of money to our bottom line. And I get that. I understand why we are, but we become a significant part of these manufacturers' business process. And if that is the case, then they have to be thinking about how we work and what is important to us. And we're a little quirky. We're not an easy, we do have high expectations, and that's just part of it. Yeah. So, I feel like we're just all doing I know the manufacturers are trying to do their best too. I mean, their model has changed completely. I have a lot of sympathy and I know how hard they work too. And we've got manufacturers who have multiple generations. They're trying to feed their families the same way we're trying to feed them. Ours. And I don't think anybody's like out to scam us. It's just that we work in a very particular way, and we're directly facing a person who we are very reliant on for their future business. And so we have a certain level of customer service we have to provide, and therefore we expect that from a certain level of customer service from the people that are working with us, because we're directly taking it in the face. If you're in a store environment, to some degree, because you have so many different product lines, you have on-site people who are fixing things. You have on-site people who are managing those relationships, and you're buying a whole lot more. So when you go back to the manufacturer and say, hey, this has been a problem, can you fix it? They listen. We're not in that same boat, and we know it. So we have to be a little bit more strategic in our purchases so that we are working with brands that are as reliable as we possibly can. because we are our reputation is so linked to how things come, whether or not,
Absolutely.
and we don't have the same resources. In your receiving, are you going to have that furniture doctor situation? Is that a plan for you?
Yeah, what I have noticed, and I've done a lot of poking around,
Sure.
is the furniture doctor services are actually really just outside furniture repair companies that are on call when each individual manufacturer may need a repair. So, it's funny, the individual that does a lot of the repairs for a lot of the New Jersey designers, we all, use the same person. So Vanguard has given me his information. Another receiver gave me his information. So there's, this one person that kind of comes in and does his magic. So yes, I mean, listen, if it comes in and we're able to solve for it, that's what you're paying in terms of the receiving fee for, I think. And I think to your point, it's really just a matter of a lot of this stuff isn't hard. It's just we need somebody who will step in and say, I will take care of it for you. And it's just really, really hard to find that nowadays, especially in the warehousing logistics business. It's just like they know everyone's just trying to do the bare minimum, not be liable for anything. And at the end of the day, it's just, especially with AI and advances in tech, customer service and this lived experience is going to become very important. And a lot of it is going to be who's on the ground taking care of me. And that's what I think we're leaning into with Nest Freight, at least. So
Right.
solving some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a situation where I think a lot of us have been burned before. We had a few designers who reached out to us in California because their receiver had a fire and they lost everything. And then there was this question of insurance. And, even if it's things like because a lot of times what you might not know if you're listening is the receiver can't have insurance for your items. But was not communicated to the designer that they have to have special insurance that covers the scenario where it's sitting there. And if it was $100,000 worth of your client's stuff or more, let's just say it could be well over that, that is insane to me that's not communicated.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That is something that is so important. Even when we're talking to some of these freight carriers, a lot of them have terms and conditions that are super, super long and no one's reading them, right? But they only cover up to maybe $500, some of them, up to $3,500. So if you're moving some of your shipments, even when you're using something like a U-ship or whatever, you need to understand what you are covered for, because that will all blow back to you at the end of the day. Bethany from Bethany Adams Interiors, she actually opened her own warehouse, BAI White Glove. I think she's out in Kentucky. And her
I
and I
love
are,
it.
yeah, gal pals about all the logistic stuff. And she did a deep dive and said the same thing. Like there's just, insurance will not cover all of that stuff in the warehouse, because we're the kind of the keepers of it for the time being, but you own that merchandise as a designer. So it's your responsibility to have coverage on some of that. And yeah, I can't even imagine that large of a loss. I mean, where do you even go from there? It just, it's a terrifying reality of our business that, you hope you never have to get into. But
Part of it is utilize AI for I always tell designers this, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse on it, but use AI for this. This is where you use AI. You put in anything you are signing and you say, what are my vulnerabilities here? That's literally all you have to say. What are my legal responsibilities and vulnerabilities to my clients? I'm an interior designer. I'm holding this furniture for my client. They own it too. What do I need to have? What is this going to expose me to? And that's anyone, like a photographer that's coming into your client's home, the contractors that maybe subcontractors you're working with, the receiver, like anyone that know what your liabilities are, like that is the first. Don't sign anything without knowing what your liabilities are.
and I mean, how cool is that? We have technology now where we can, rather than just relying on a quick Google search or having to call an attorney, we do have a first step at least in protecting ourselves. And I think, the more and more this kind of pervades into the interior design industry, and people like yourself is talking about it, and you're covering these topics and you're on panels talking about it. I mean, it should allow us to all operate more creatively, because we don't have to worry so much about that, because we all know there's like a standard to, who you're using for receiving or how you're shipping things or what kind of insurance you need. Like it's, and I feel like you've been on this journey too of standardizing a lot of the practices that interior designers, maybe just don't understand until they actually start operating real businesses.
Right. When we see the same, if you, and anybody I think would, in my situation would do the same thing. If you see these vulnerabilities playing out, and the expense always seems to fall on the designer, right?
Always,
Always.
always.
You're like, okay, I'll pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I go through and I when I do my bookkeeping, I look through and I'm just like, wow, like some of this just if I didn't know it wouldn't have been covered, but also like some of these fees you just can't ever anticipate. And, that's the exciting thing about Nest Rate is that we can start to anticipate some of this or at least find savings on just the requirements of our industry and moving
Even
goods and
even
services.
the
But
layer where you're trying to give them the information so that they have it and you're not going to change on them, that alone is so important for a design firm because that conversation is never fun. I mean, who would want to come back to somebody who you've given a price to and say, "Oh, by the way, it's $2,000 more." Like no one wants to say that to someone. I know designers who, I always say in this podcast, I'm like, there's a designer who's not going to sleep tonight because they have to deliver some news tomorrow for somebody, and they're literally going to be spinning all night. That part of your brain is so well developed about problem solving and solutions because you have to know it for design that when you know you have to deliver bad news, you're running that same part of your brain is telling you all the scenarios that could happen. Like this person's going to yell at me and then they're going to fire me and then they're going to tell two friends and then they're going to sue me and then this is going to happen. Like that is also the same part of that brain. So you're just like, I'm not going to sleep tonight because I'm thinking about these scenarios and some of them are very bad for
yeah,
me, you
yeah,
know? And so that is a reality that we don't talk about and how it plays out in our bodies and stress and years of those kinds of things spinning through our heads. And it takes designers a really long time to not emotionally react to
yeah.
things like that.
The
So
whole nervous
having
system.
someone do you and really care is so good. It's like so amazing.
That whole like nervous system regulation conversation is like that's a whole other podcast too. I mean, the amount
Yeah.
of stress that designers are under, it's pretty amazing to me when people just think that we are shopping and we do this for fun. Like this is a serious business. We
Yeah.
are liable for so many things.
Billions of dollars, serious business and billions of dollars are on the line. Really serious, very power imbalanced client who can ruin us if they want to, just for the funsies. That is no, I mean, that's the reality of design is we're working with people who have a lot more money than we do. And as a result, we have to be very, very careful,
Yeah. Well, that's
and
also, when I'm working through Nest Freight is the requirements when I speak to some of these carriers too. I mean, the requirements for what they cover, is super low. So I was like, well, at a minimum, we need to increase the coverage when we're talking to some of these carriers and make sure that what they're moving, is minimum like $5,000 coverage. Like that's minimum for designers. We would never put something on a truck for $500. That's like removing that liability, but also thinking through do you need the white glove inside delivery or is your client okay with curbside? Is your client going to be home when things are dropped off curbside? Like, what does that look like? Should it just go to the studio? Do you need things at the studio? Do you need things delivered to the studio like plumbing and rough-in valves, or can we maybe deliver some of that stuff elsewhere? So it's, those types of things too, in terms of logistics. It's not just, designers thinking through, colorways and fabric swatches and usage counts and things like that. It's also this whole, if you're doing procurement as a designer, this whole other level of logistics questions and things that need to come up that get complicated. So it's, I'm trying to be the one that facilitates that and, be the voice of that within Nest Freight. And it's, it's a lot.
love it. I mean, I think
For a lot.
it is a lot, but it's one of those things that I feel like design tends to bring in people who like complicated problems or are able to solve complicated problems.
I
This
do.
is a complicated problem, and I
You
feel
do
like
too.
yeah. So it's just one of those things. You're just taking a puzzle and you're trying to fit it together in a way that actually would make sense. And
For
you
sure.
know, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Jaclyn. This has been so great. I'm so
You,
glad
Laurie.
we finally got this podcast together because I really want designers to see what it is you're putting together and give it a try and join now while it's starting because you will be able to help shape it for other designers. So give that feedback when you're doing it. Tell her what the process is for you and how she could make the process better for the next designer down the road. We're in this together and we have to work together in doing that.
100%. Yes. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for giving me the platform. I mean, if anybody listens to this podcast too, we've got a special little promo code for those of you who are loyal to Laurie because I am. So
Yay!
IDC 2026. I'll text that to you as well. But one
Wonderful.
free. Sample us, try us, let us help you save money, save some stress, join our community as well. It's just, we're all trying to just do better for each other. And I so appreciate it. This is,
Thank you.
so aligned with what we're doing. So
Yay, yay. Well, thanks so much.
thank you. Have a good one.
This episode is brought to you by Curry & Company. Designers, you know the moment. You walk into the room and the lighting stops you in your tracks. Chances are it might be Curry. Curry & Company has built its reputation on pieces that feel sculptural, collected, and timeless, from hand-finished chandeliers to statement lamps, furniture, and accessories. Their collection is top-notch. If you haven't explored their newest introductions, take a look. Visit curryandcompany.com